What if Indochina reunited today? Indochinese Union, or French Indochina, was a colony of France from 1887 to 1954. It was located on mainland Southeast Asia. As the area had been influenced by China to the north and India to the northwest, the French called it the Indochina. French Indochina was made up of 3 countries, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, plus a tiny portion of southern China. Its borders are still preserved in modern day as they were based on natural boundaries like the Mekong River, unlike the artificial borders created in Africa. The French first came to Indochina in the 1860s, shortly after the Second Opium War, which diminished China's influence in Southeast Asia. Along with Britain, France started to set up colonies in Southeast Asia, and Indochina's location was ideal for maritime trade and rice plantations. By the beginning of the 20th century, France had reached the interior of the peninsula, colonizing the majority of the former Khmer Empire, as well as Viet. French Indochina was divided into 5 main regions. From north to south, Tonkin, Laos, Annam, Cambodia, and Cochin China. Each region was based around major cities such as Hanoi, Vientiane, Hue, Saigon, modern-day Ho Chi Minh City, and Phnom Penh, respectively. Like Algeria and many other French possessions, many of Indochina's manpower and natural resources were exploited for the benefit of the French colonial empire. Most, if not all, political power was held by the Governor-General, who in turn was under the commission of the French president. The capital of French Indochina was Hanoi for the majority of its colonial era, except when it was replaced by Saigon from 1887 to 1902, and again from 1945 to 1954. French Indochina had an area of 750,000 square kilometers, slightly larger than the metropolitan France and its neighbor Myanmar. It was also a pretty populous country, with a population of around 21.6 million in 1935. It was also the most populous French colony, with 60% of the population of metropolitan France. French Indochina was a linguistically diverse colony. French was the official language despite having a small number of native speakers. The majority of people spoke Vietnamese, with Khmer, Lao and Cantonese having a significant number of speakers as well. In terms of ethnicity, more than 3/4 of the population had Vietnamese ancestry. Khmer and Lao people were majorities in their respective areas. And a small number of French expatriates resided in rich coastal areas. French Indochina was a polytheistic colony. Buddhism and Vietnamese folk religion were the 2 most practiced religions, with Confucianism and Roman Catholicism as minority. As mentioned before, there were 5 subdivisions, or protectorates, under the Indochinese Union. The federal government in Hanoi, or Saigon, took care of all 5 protectorates. So what if French Indochina reunited today? What would it look like? How powerful would it be? Would it still be a French colony? Let's find out. First, let's look at the 3 countries that would constitute the newly formed Indochina, or New Indochina as we'll call it from now. Vietnam would be the largest and the most populous country in the Union, with an area of 331,000 square kilometers and a population of 96.2 million. Vietnamese people make up the majority of the population. Similarly, followers of Vietnamese folk religion outnumbers Christians and Buddhists by a large number. Vietnam's current government is dominated by the Communist Party of Vietnam, hence the official name of the country Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Vietnam would be the biggest economic power in the Union. In world rankings, however, Vietnam is far behind the most developed countries, although it has been growing quickly in recent years. The Gini coefficient for Vietnam was 33.4, which means it has a medium wealth/income inequality. The Human Development Index score is 0.708, placing it just above the high category. The currency of Vietnam is Vietnamese dong. Vietnam uses UTC plus 7 time zone, 1 hour behind China and 1.5 hours in front of India. The second largest country in the Union would be Lao People's Democratic Republic, or simply called Laos. It has an area of 238,000 square kilometers, or roughly a third of New Indochina, and a population of 7.1 million, only 6% of the population of New Indochina. Lao people constitute 53% of the population, followed by Khmer and Hmong people. Buddhism is the most widely practiced religion with 2/3 of the population. The Lao government has the same ideology and structure as the Vietnamese one, meaning that New Indochina is likely to be a one-party socialist republic as well. Laos is much less developed economically than its eastern neighbor, making its economy heavily reliable on Vietnam. The wealth and income inequality in Laos is similar to Vietnam, but its HDI score is slightly lower, placing it in the medium category. Its currency is KIP and it uses the same time zone as Vietnam. The last country to make up New Indochina would be Cambodia, which is actually a kingdom. Upon the creation of New Indochina, however, its monarchy is likely to be abolished in favor of Vietnam and Laos Communist Party republics. If for some reason, the monarchy was allowed to be preserved, it would serve as a figurehead for the Cambodian people with an almost zero political power. Cambodia is slightly smaller than Laos, but has twice the population of Laos. It is largely a homogeneous country with ethnic Khmer making up 97% of the population. Interestingly, Buddhism is the official religion, which would likely remain the same in New Indochina. Cambodia would be the poorest and the least developed region in New Indochina. It also has the lowest HDI score. Cambodia also uses UTC plus 7 as its time zone. Combined together, the newly formed New Indochina would have an area of 750,000 square kilometers, making it the world's 39th largest country behind Zambia and in front of its neighbor Myanmar. The population of New Indochina would be 118,880,000, placing it behind Japan but in front of Ethiopia. 81% of the population would live in the Vietnam region. Likewise, Vietnamese would be the most widely used language in New Indochina, followed by Khmer and Lao. There's a possibility that French could be used as lingua franca due to historical reasons, but most Laos and Cambodians would have to learn Vietnamese as their second languages. In terms of ethnicity, 69% of the population would be Vietnamese, followed by 13% Khmer, 3% Laos, and 15% other minorities. Similarly, Vietnamese folk religion would be the biggest religion with 70% of the population practicing it, followed by 21% Buddhists, 6% Christians, and 3% others. As mentioned previously, the government of New Indochina would likely be a federation of socialist republics similar to the Soviet Union. Each of the three regions would be administered as a member state of the bigger federation. The capital city would be Hanoi since it is where the current government of Vietnam, the most powerful country in the Union, is located in. The economy of New Indochina would improve slightly due to the unionization, but still heavily reliant of Vietnam as a whole. It would have a GDP based on purchasing power parity of $1.2 trillion. Making it the world's 22nd biggest economy behind Thailand, its closest neighbor. Both countries would be regional powerhouses in Southeast Asia. In terms of nominal GDP, New Indochina would have the world's 30th largest economy behind Ireland and in front of Israel. The GDP per capita based on PPP would be $9,934, placing it behind Iraq. Quite shockingly. Its nominal GDP per capita would be a much less $3,247, indicating the low cost of living in New Indochina. This would place it between the two North African countries, Libya and Morocco. Its Gini coefficient would be 35.3 with medium income inequality. Its HDI score would be 0.638, placing it in the mid-tier as well. The currency for New Indochina would likely be Vietnamese dong due to the overwhelming size of Vietnam's economy and population. The time zone would remain the same for all regions at UTC+7. There would be 637,000 active personnel in New Indochina's military, which would be the 7th largest in the world. The number of reserve personnel would be 200,000, making it the world's 24th largest right behind Thailand. Now let's compare New Indochina with its neighbors, notably members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. In terms of area, New Indochina would be the second largest country. Interestingly, Indonesia would be roughly the same size as New Indochina, Myanmar, and Thailand combined. New Indochina would also be second in terms of population, with slightly more citizens than the Philippines, and less than half of Indonesia's. It would be the third largest economy in the region behind Indonesia and Thailand, the only three countries with a trillion-dollar economy. The same applies for nominal GDP, except for the fact that its GDP would be a third of its size. New Indochina would be in the bottom tier in terms of GDP per capita, behind Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. When converted into nominal GDP, the numbers would look even worse for New Indochina, making it the second poorest country in the region, just behind Myanmar. Its Gini coefficient would be the second best in the region, though. Most countries would have worse wealth and income inequalities than New Indochina. However, its HDI index score would only be the fifth highest in the region, far behind countries like Malaysia and Thailand. Lastly, its military would be the largest in the region, with the highest number of active personnel. In addition to the second highest number of reserve personnel along with Thailand. Altogether, New Indochina would have large population and military that can sustain its economic growth. However, without addressing its political and economic issues critically, it would remain as a developing country for decades, if not centuries. So what do you think? Do you think New Indochina can come into existence in the future? Why or why not? Explain it in the comment below. Thank you for watching.